Are we good? Okay, we're going to call the meeting to order for Monday, February 25th, 2019. Call to order. Mr. Peterson?
Mr. Dahl.
Here.
Dr. Rower.
Here.
Mr. Schroyer.
Here.
Megan Sparks.
Here.
And Annie Self.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we're going to have the approval of the agenda as presented.
Move. Second.
Call the roll, please, Mr. Peterson.
Mr. Dahl.
Yes.
Dr. Rower.
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer.
Yes.
Megan Sparks.
Yes.
And Annie Self.
Yes. Now we're going to have the Board of Education reports, legislative report by Mrs. Sparks.
Committee assignments have been made in both the House and the Senate, and work is starting to begin again. Penny Lehner once again chairs the Senate Education Committee and hopes to work with Governor DeWine to improve House Bill 70. House Bill 70 allows for a CEO to be put in charge of a school district if that school district has a failing report card for 3 years in a row. As of right now, only Youngstown and Lorraine School Districts has a CEO, and it appears that both Dayton Public and Columbus Public, the largest school district in our state, may be next. This bill does not affect Centerville, but it's very controversial in our state, and we need to follow it. The House Finance Committee held hearings about House Bill 62. This bill, which funds the state transportation budget, affects school districts by increasing fuel tax refunds from 6 cents to 24 cents, which offsets the initial 18 cents increase in gas tax. The Senate and Ways Committee heard testimony on Senate Bill 26. This bill permits teachers from deducting from their state income tax up to $250 for out-of-pocket expenses for classroom supplies and professional development. That's the end of the report.
Thank you. Now we'll call the Student Board of Education reps. We've got Julia Lokai and Jacob Meyer tonight.
Hello, I'm Julia Lokai. Some things that we've been working on, we recently had another student survey called Candy and Comments, and we went over the general results with Mr. Carroll already. We also sent a letter/essay to Mrs. McGuire to read to the Board of Education, and Jacob's going to talk about a little bit what that said.
Hi, I'm Jacob Myers. I'm a junior. Like Julia said, we sent a letter to the Board of Education kind of highlighting our meeting with Ms. McGuire. So we kind of talked about how our education is like Interstate 675 and how in order for it to be organized, there has to be established speed and laws and other things like that. So kind of rearing off that pathway, we talked about standardized testing and how we need to stop focusing on district report cards and start putting a greater emphasis on student report cards. We also talked about mental health awareness and how the effects on students are being overlooked sometimes. And we also talked about how the K through 12 education does not end upon graduation and how we need to increase the number of career pathways. So those are our main bullet points that we sent to Ms. McGuire. And then she actually sent us an invitation to actually come speak at the State Board of Education. So we're going to accept that invitation and go speak hopefully soon. That's the end of our report.
Thank you. And I would like to add that on March 6th, we have been invited to the West Carrollton Board of Education meeting. They've reached out to me, Mr. Llewellyn, who's a board member with West Carrollton. They are very interested in starting the program that we have for students. So we're going to go to their board meeting next week and present what we do, and we're going to have some interaction with them. And then we're going to work with their student application process and hopefully help them get students on their board. So we're super excited about that. Right, thank you. Anybody for honors?
Sure. Thank you, Mrs. Self. Tonight I'd like to call Joshua York up to the podium, please. And while Mr. York is making his way up here, we have the honor of having Mr. York present an award to 2 of our great staff members. So I'll let him start and take it from there.
Oh, good. Thank you for having me. My name is Joshua York. I'm a Naturalist and Education Supervisor for Five River MetroParks. And my team handles a lot of the educational field trips. A lot of schools visit us, as well as we do a lot of teacher training and teacher workshops. And of course, many of you are probably well aware that an immense amount of research expresses the importance of just kids getting outside and exploring, and I mean, it makes sense, right? You know, hands-on, using all your five senses and exploring. But we were hearing in a lot of our teacher workshops several years ago that a lot of the teachers that were using the outdoors in their everyday learning were kind of seen as outcasts, that they were the crazy teachers that had the animals in the classroom, or maybe the compost bin in their classroom. And we wanted to help elevate, or find a way to help elevate those teachers that were doing all of the right things and improving test scores in their own classroom. So we're teamed up with the Virginia B. Kettering Foundation, and got a grant to help facilitate what these teachers are doing in their classrooms. And so we've been doing this since 2014. You might have recalled or remember Robert Irwin receiving one of the first Outstanding Teacher Awards. But this year in 2018, we've had the pleasure of seeing 2 teachers come from one school district. We've never seen that happen before, and that of course is Centerville City Schools. And so we have our 2 award winners, Kelly George with Klein Elementary in 2nd grade. Right over there. And then, let's see, I'm just going to go ahead and read a paragraph that was kind of prepared from the nominator here real quick, if you don't mind. Listen to all this good stuff about you while standing over here. But Kelly George has long been a personal interest in sharing in nature with others, and in 2017 began an inquiry project with their students after noticing a sharp decline in the number of ruby-throated hummingbirds at a classroom outdoor feeder. With the help of her 5th graders, her students realized that there might be a lack of insects on the school grounds. Kelly immediately got to work writing a grant to build Klein Elementary's pollinator garden and involved students and families with each step. Kelly allows her students to explore nature all the time, having a worm farm, a bulb experimenting station, and a journaling station next to their windows, complete with binoculars. Her nominator said it best. Kelly chooses active nature exploration, investigation, and immersion to drive and inspire her students' learning over worksheets, instead of worksheets and seat work daily. She also leads an after-school environmental club for 2nd to 5th graders at Klein, encouraging families to get outside and exploring their local parks. 1 year since the pollinator garden's creation, teachers, parents, students, and community members are more aware of the importance of pollinator habitat for a healthy and thriving environment, and students are already planning for the next phase. So thank you for allowing your students to explore, discover, and take ownership of their education and their schoolyard. You're empowering the next generation, and we cannot thank you enough. So then Laura Peterson, come on up. She is a naturalist teacher with Primary Village South. And for Laura Peterson, the natural world is her curriculum, and the outdoors is her classroom at Primary Village South. No matter the weather, she gets the 1st graders learning out in the woods, meadows, and courtyards using a boot cart to provide an appropriate footwear for her students if it's wet and muddy. It's like, I've never heard of teachers doing that before, so it's pretty awesome. As a school naturalist, she weaves literacy, math, science, technology, and art into her lessons, where she is a guide and her students are the scientists. She managed the creation of a pond on school grounds coordinated with 14 Eagle Scout projects at her school. Her influence is spread throughout the school, and other teachers have created their own outdoor spaces like butterfly, sunflower, sensory, bird, vegetable, and ABC gardens for students to explore. Laura is getting children outdoors outside of the Primary Village South community and is presented at Warren County ESC Green Schoolyards workshops and helped Primary Village South receive a Best in Ohio Connecting to Nature Award. She actively works to help combat nature deficit disorder at PBS and uses nature to help children who may have difficulty in a typical outdoor classroom setting, helping them to find their time to shine through nature. We are so thrilled to recognize Laura for all that she does in the community. Thank you, Laura.
comments before any official action is taken. The board president will ask if anyone would like to address the board. Adult speakers are requested to address the board from the podium to state their name and address, and students, minors, only need to state their names. We ask that all who speak to limit their comments to no more than 3 minutes, as the board does have pre-scheduled reports and action items on the agenda. The board will listen to all who speak, but generally not engage in discussion or dialogue at this time. Matters requiring follow-up will be directed to the superintendent. Individual board members can be contacted for a set meeting appointment, and written correspondence may be mailed to the board office. Do we have anybody who'd like to speak this evening? Okay. All right, on to Mr. Beederman with the treasurer's report.
Good evening. Tonight I would like to start with a brief overview of my presentation. I have 3 charts I would like to talk about this evening. The first is a state funding revenue information chart. The second is a budget and expenses chart. And the last is a carryover balances, percentage, and levy history chart. Our actual revenue from the state has been basically flat for many years. With this chart, I'm showing a more realistic impact of what this flat source of state funding has had on our school district when applying inflation to each of the years back to 2004. $17.2 million was the value of the state revenue received in 2004 when applying consumer price index percentages for inflation. The projected state revenue for this year is $13.9 million, which is $3.3 million less than the inflationary amount received back in 2004. In fiscal year 2018, the actual state funding formula only made up 14.1% of our total general fund revenue. It is fair to say the state has not supported our school district adequately financially for a very long time. Our new governor will be proposing his version of the next biennial budget very soon. It will be important for us to stay involved as it goes through the legislative process for implementation this coming July. The next slide is a budget and expenses chart. Through the first 7 months of the fiscal year, or 58.3% of the year, all the expense categories are under budget. Salaries are 57.6% spent, benefits are 57.5% spent, services are 46.1% spent, materials are 47.2% spent, and the equipment category is only 12.7% spent at this time. Continuing with the same slide, the salaries expenses look to be very close to the annual budget at fiscal year end. The benefits category had higher than expected medical insurance enrollments beginning in January. Because of this, it is very likely that the benefits category will be slightly above budget at fiscal year end. My last chart this evening will show historical fiscal year end carryover balance percentages and levy history information. You can see on this chart each time the carryover balance as a percentage of expenses has decreased significantly at fiscal year end, our community has supported a levy for new revenue. Every 4 years, a new levy was approved from 2001 to 2013. Although not shown on this chart, the average time frame for a new levy has been every 4 years since 1976. Coinciding with the legislative implementation of House Bill 920, which has severely limited inflationary growth and real estate revenue. Continuing with the same slide, it has now been 6 years since the last levy was approved in 2013. Sorry. The projected drop in carryover balance as a percentage of expenses from 2019 through 2023 on this chart, taken from the 5-year forecast projection, you can see how important it will be for us to pass our next levy in the near future. And as you can see on the start section there, as we move forward to that, it has been 6 years since the last levy was approved by our voters. That concludes my report this evening, unless there are any additional questions from the Board of Education.
I have a question unrelated to this. Megan talked about one of the things that the governor is doing is a 18 cent per gallon tax increase. Do we have any idea what that extra amount, with all the traveling, the gas, and the buses that we have, would actually cost the district? I mean, it's something maybe we could find out.
Yeah.
I didn't think you'd be able to pull that out of your
No, I don't have any information on that, but.
Could you just find, I'm just curious what that would mean in terms of cost. How many thousands of dollars that actually cost, sort of a hidden increase that we're going to see by this thing?
Well,
Curious.
here's my concern on this, Dr. Rohr, is, you've heard me talking about at past board meetings that we continue to get a reduction, and Raj and Tani even talked about that last month in our state funding, the transportation funding component of that. My concern is that, based on what Megan just said this evening, is that will potentially erode that even further by doing it the way she presented this evening in her legislative report. So that makes it much easier for them to reduce that funding even more, because they're using it for other purposes, the cost of the school district. I don't have the dollar figures.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know just what it is.
Yeah.
I can only hope that Representative Antoni will actually work for our school district and try to work those things out, as opposed to just let it go through. So we'll see how things go, but I'd be curious to know how much extra cost it is.
Any other questions? Thanks.
Thank you. All right, treasurer's recommendations. Consider approving the January 2019 financial statements, the monthly financial report, fund activity report, appropriations report, general funding spending report, general fund summary, the general fund summary comparison, purchase orders included in statement number 7, approved by administration then and now, certified by the treasurer and supported by the board, resolution totaling $93,320.62.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please, Mr. Peterman.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
And Andy Self?
Yes. Consider approving the minutes of the following Board of Education meeting, the January 28th, 2019 regular meeting, and the February 19th, 2019 special meeting, which is our work session.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
And Andy Self?
Yes. Just very quickly, for students who might be attending as our guests, we work a week before the board meeting and have a work session. So everything that we're voting on, and it sounds like we're going expediently, is because we worked last week and have come decisions on that. So I meant to explain that first here. So, okay. All right. Superintendent's recommendations. I have a quick question. Just read this. I'm still here. All right. All right, Schedule A, the superintendent recommends accepting resignations as listed on Schedule A. Superintendent recommends the employment, change of employment status, or change of contract status for the certificated personnel listed on Schedule B for the salaries, programs, and on the effective dates given. The superintendent recommends the employment or change of employment status for the support staff personnel listed on Schedule C for the salaries, programs, and on the effective dates given. The superintendent recommends the employment of the personnel listed on Schedules D and D1 for supplemental contracts or extra duty assignments. The superintendent recommends the granting of leaves of absence for the personnel listed on Schedule E for the reasons and on the dates.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please, Mr. Peterman.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
And Andy Self?
Yes. Consider approving a farm lease between Centerville City Schools and Lucas Brothers Farms for both Sheehan and Franklin Street properties, as previously discussed.
So moved.
Second. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
And Andy Self?
Yes. Consider accepting Osterfield Champions' request to withdraw their bid and accept the second best and lowest bid from Apex Mechanical to replace Primary Village North domestic water pipe for $139,600.
So moved.
Second.
Call the roll, please, Mr. Peterman.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Abstain.
And Andy Self?
Yes. Consider a resolution authorizing the curriculum department to administer the State of Ohio third grade English language arts assessment in paper format for the 2019-2020 school year.
So moved. Second.
Call the roll, please, Mr. Peterman.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
And Annie Self.
Yes. Call for adjournment.
So moved.
Second.
All right, call the roll, please.
Mr. Dahl?
Yes.
Dr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Schroyer?
Yes.
Megan Sparks?
Yes.
And Annie Self.
Yes. Thank you all so much for coming.
Thanks.